you. I will now call tonight's Educational Affairs Committee meeting to order. We will start with roll call. We'll go around the table, starting with Mr. Epps.
Zachary Epps, present.
Robin Murphy, present.
Ross Whiting, present. Charles Wu, present.
Liam Mulhern, present. Mia Lipstein, present.
Pamela Henry, present.
Thank you. Can I please have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Thank you. The motion carries. Tonight, we have two agenda items to topics to discuss, and the first one is an update on the pilot programs in the special education department, and it looks like Ms. Kugler will be starting us off.
We're gonna actually
And
start
Dr.
with,
D.
we're gonna start with Dr.
Oh, Dr. K.
Yes.
She was in my line of sight, so apologies, Dr. Catherine
I
Bone.
could be in your.
I'm gonna turn it over to the special education team in the Office of Education and stop talking. Thank you.
Or you did that.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. We're here to bring back around a topic that we brought to you, I think, in January, when we talked about our framework that we were working on in our special education department. And in particular, tonight's focus is going to be on the work that our learning support committee, just to brief you on the work that we did. We wanted to build a framework for consistency and interventions, programming for our special education students. And we had 3 committees led by our supervisors. And 2 of our supervisors are in the audience. We have Jackie, our high school supervisor, who led our emotional support committee. We have Dr. Tracy Lank, who worked with our life skills teachers and autistic support teachers as well. And then tonight, we're going to be focusing on the school board and the work they did in learning support committees. These committees consisted of administrators, central office, teachers. We brought parents in, we had some student input, we had paraprofessionals, we had related service providers, we had DCBAs. If I haven't named them, I'm sure they were part of it in some capacity. Part of the presentation that was in January, Ms. Kukla went over some of the work that was done in the learning support area, particularly in the work of trying to find consistent programs. We have a lot of programs that our teachers do use and our students are very successful with. But we wanted to bring that together to be more consistent across schools, meaning the K-4s, as well as consistent as students move from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade and on. So what we did was, I'll let Ms. Kugler go into that in a moment, but we'll continue here. This is where we started. We had our pilot goals and tasks. We piloted a number of programs, I believe at least 7, maybe more. We brought together some quantitative and qualitative data. We're going to bring together some recommendations and costs to the board, which is what we told you we would do in January, and then what our next steps are for implementation as we evaluate these programs. And not only did we see success with the ones that we're going to recommend tonight, but we want to maintain that success because our students just continue to come. This is where we started in our English language arts. We had a combination of Gen Ed 4 and intervention materials. These are what the students and some of you as parents might already be familiar with if you've heard your students or your teachers use these program names: Reading Mastery, Read 180, Systems 44, and of course the specialized teacher training. In math, the teacher modified Gen Ed and core materials, and we use IXL. And then for progress monitoring, we use web probes and curriculum-based probes. So this is where we started. This is what we've been working with. Again, it was all well intended, but a little all over the place. We wanted to tighten it up. All right, this is our why. So people always ask, you're doing this work, or you're just doing it to fill some space? No, we did it because we had a purpose. And it was really to develop this continuum of evidence-based ELA and math interventions for our students. And we're going to have this hopefully in place before approval for the 24-25 school year. Implementing these pilot programs at all levels, and using that quantitative student data and qualitative teacher data to identify the programs that are most effective in meeting the students' needs. So while we have consistent programs, we know IEP is individualized, so we still have to make it tailored to each student's needs. This just shows you a timeline of where we started. It's a very, very brief overview, but it gives you an idea of where our work was all the way through. I won't read that to you, but you can see what we did, when we did it, and who participated. We got December through March, we implemented it. And then in between that December, March, February, we brought all the information to you here in the affairs. We conducted informal observations. We all got in classrooms, myself included. It was pretty awesome to be back in the classrooms, watch this instruction take place, watch the enthusiasm of the teachers and the enthusiasm of the students, even at the secondary level. We showed some enthusiasm. And here we are now, we're selecting programs and present our final work to you here. The pilot program info that we used, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is what we did. Corrective reading, these are just some of the names of the programs here. See them on the left-hand side. iLit 20, we have all these fancy names in education, right? Literature 20, iReady Reading and Math, Ready Classroom, Success Maker Math, and WonderWorks. And you can see what was that focus for grade level and specifically what area we were targeting. And then the delivery system to which we were delivering this to the students. Is it in, I don't want to say old school paper, but you know, there is some of that paper and text, which really is still something worthwhile, right? Kids need to touch things, get that sensory. And then we had some online and, you know, combination too. These are our pilot program teachers. We've not done any of this without their volunteering and their work, their constant follow-up, constant PD willingness. You know, it's never easy. I'm sure you know this. It's never easy to leave your classroom and write some plan, you know, to do this work, but they realize the importance in it because they always feel like they're leaving something to come back and to have to get back into the classroom is really hard. So we really want to just applaud these teachers for their willingness to participate in this.
You want me to? All right, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about our participants and get into the rest of the presentation. We had 247 students who got to participate in some way with some of our, with one or more of our pilot programs. We have a little over 800 students with IEPs in the district, so we were excited to be able to give many kids an opportunity to participate and give feedback. We had 17 different teachers who piloted at least one, some of them piloted two programs as well. And then the 4 of us in the special education department participated in some way. Plus we had principals in each of the buildings go in and do some observations to other programs in action. This is just another way to show you. Dr. Catron-Bone talked about some of the programs that we piloted, and we'll get into a little bit more description for each of them as well. But we wanted you to see how many teachers and students at each of the building levels used the programs, just for another sort of picture of that. Okay, little description of each of the programs that we looked at. So I won't read these exactly to you, but we wanted to look at programs that were for both supplement of the Gen Ed core that aligned with IEP goal-based instruction for reading, writing, and math, and also replacement. If we are educating students with IEPs in the special education classroom and replacing the Gen Ed core curricular materials with other curricular materials, what programs would be good for that? Okay, so some of the programs can do one or the other. Some of them can do both. I also have that on another slide for you, just so you can think about this from all different perspectives. Okay, these are our focused ELA, English Language Arts. iReady is unique because it does both. Ready Classroom was math, and Success Maker was math. Okay, we're going to get into the data now. Before I get into the data, I do want to be clear. You know, obviously we feel the data is critical to share with you, but remember from the timeline, our students had the opportunity to really, with fidelity, participate in this program for these programs for about 3 months. And so we were not expecting that the data would show any sort of amazing growth over 3 months of time. Actually, though, some of it did, which is kind of cool. But we still felt that it was important to look at and review the quantitative data. It's certainly not enough from any length of time to say this program is definitely far superior over the other, but we still want to give it to you either way. The first program that we looked at, we're going to talk about a little bit from a data perspective, was WonderWorks. So WonderWorks is a complement to the Wonders program that we have. And because it's a complement to a Gen Ed core, it's not necessarily designed as a robust intervention in terms of closing instructional gaps, where you would be collecting really specific quantitative data on that. It's really just like, let's give the student something to help them have a more successful experience that is really just like the core curricular materials that we're using. And therefore, when we went to look at the data, or asked the teachers about collecting data, it really became apparent that there was not a comprehensive way to collect data specific to that program. We did have the teachers then look at pre and post IEP goal data in relation to this as the content by which they provided the instruction, and that data wasn't really compelling either. So this is our data that we didn't feel the data was helpful to this part. That was for WonderWorks. That doesn't mean we don't think WonderWorks is a good program, but we didn't think it was necessarily the best fit for what we're looking at. Okay, corrective reading, and then the next slide talks about corrective decoding, is a very, it's a direct instruction, scripted, early release, errorless teaching instructional intervention. You can use it as a replacement, or you can use it as intervention. We decided to use it as part of our replacement instruction. So students who are educated in the special education class for their ELA instruction. They went through the corrective reading program in an errorless teaching format, which means the teacher reads through the script and provides the direct instruction. They do it first, then you do it together, then you release the students to do it on their own. So that is how the corrective reading and corrective decoding program works. The data points that the teachers took was just a comprehensive overview of students' comprehension skills. As you can see, ranked from 0 to 500. And so this is our students' pre and post pilot data. Pretty nice for that short amount of time that they were in it. Similar, as I said, there's a decoding program too. I should say also that the corrective programs have 4 levels, and kids take placement tests to see where they would fit in relation to the program. Some of them recommend that you go through it in 6 months, some in a year. And so the whole thing is really designed, if you started at the very beginning, to be through the whole program within a 2-year span, within a 3-year span. So this is our data for decoding. Decoding is breaking down words to be able to read multi-syllables according to the word and letter sounds. And so this is our data for that, which was pretty nice too. iReady is a program, our programs put out by Curriculum Associates, is the company. And iReady has a reading and a math component. The way that iReady works is that the students take a diagnostic assessment, and then the program delivers instruction according to where the instructional gaps exist. They start out with the diagnostic at grade level, and then the program adjusts itself, diagnostic assessment, to determine where the students need to perform and then where it ends. One of the beautiful things about this is there's a flag for the assessment if a student seems to work through it too quickly. And then you can say, guess what, you got a flag, you get to do it again. And so our kids were quick to know they didn't want the flag there for that. The way that the diagnostic growth works here is within a level that you can see here with the placement overall. Okay, so it's kind of layered. The red is for students that are performing 2 years or plus below grade level. That's where their scores would be. So if a 3rd grade student, let me just show you here. If a 3rd grade student scored anywhere within this 100 range, they would be performing at the kindergarten level. You could also be within that range and be a second grader. Does that make sense to everybody? If you were a grade 1 student and you were performing here, you would be doing better. That's how that chart is designed. So the diagnostic growth that the students would make, we would want to see in a year about 100 and 150 points. So this is how our students did within that time frame. As to be expected, most students didn't make a very significant amount of growth over that short pilot time that we did it, but some students actually did make some nice growth. This is our math presentation, and I don't have the whole chart here for you, but I wanted you to see a snippet. So similar idea, the numbers are a little bit different. Okay, but you can see that the math diagnostic growth too, similar to the reading iReady. All right, Success Maker Mathematics. Success Maker we chose because Success Maker is put out by Savvis and aligns with the Envision, which is our core math program. You may have noticed in one of the earlier slides that Success Maker addresses math skills through 8th grade, and we use this at the high school level as well. Now, the reason for that is there are not necessarily intervention programs out there that are specific to math courses. So you can't necessarily find an algebra intervention program or a geometry intervention program. All of the skills that we teach students through kindergarten through 8th grade are the foundations for being successful in math, geometry. I should know more because my husband's a math teacher, but
I was just thinking that.
Oh, I know.
Just
He's
thinking that.
so disappointed in me right now. Calculus, pre-calc tricks. We still felt like Success Maker was really critical because of a variety of reasons. We know mostly that our students with IEPs that have math based learning disabilities and who have math goals are experiencing gaps in their ability to perform with foundational mathematical skills. So we felt that this was really a good program for us to use for that reason. Now, the way that the Success Maker diagnostic works, the kids take it, it's the same as I mentioned in iReady. It adjusts up or down according to where the kids are performing with their responses. There's also a flag in that one if kids are moving too quickly. And the way that the data comes out to us is how much growth that they've made from their original point. We would want to see 100% growth. The thing that I thought was really cool about this was that we got a bunch of students who, when they took their diagnostic, they tested at grade level. And so I'll talk about that a little bit more later when we talk about our progress monitoring approach. But that is a really nice data point that tells us that if that child has a math learning disability, maybe they don't need instruction in the foundational skills, but they need more support than within algebra or geometry. So that it helps us differentiate between the two different types of math students. So we thought that was neat. ILIT is a program that is also put out by Savvis, and we were looking for something for our secondary students for reading, but we sort of stumbled upon that when we were talking to them about Success Maker. They said, hey, we have something for literacy too. Why don't you take a look at it? And so we did, and we thought it was kind of cool. So we decided let's pilot that. ILIT works. When you think about the Lexile growth for this, it's similar to the iReady in that these levels here sort of match up more or less. And the students take a bit of an assessment. It's not as comprehensive of a diagnostic assessment as the other ones, but they do a few because you have to read a lot of passages. And so it's not specific to like the skills that are addressed in the iReady. It's more just about general comprehension and written responses. And so students may go through 3, 4, 5 passages and then they get started on their work moving forward. ILIT, the teachers could assign all sorts of different activities for the students. There's an interactive component where the teacher and the student are communicating back and forth. There's a lot of activity within the reading assignments of highlight and bring it down and bring it over here. Similar to some of the things we were talking about in our principal meeting about how the PSSAs are going to be changing. So that was really nice. A Lexile tends to be about 150 points per grade. And so, again, here's the growth for our students who participated in that. It was really neat to see on the higher end in just those 8 weeks or so that some students were able to really focus in and make that growth. So that was really nice to see. And so I'll say, in summary on the quantitative data, we shouldn't be surprised that we didn't see any consistent and significant huge jumps for our students because our pilot window was short. But it was really nice to see that we did have some students who made some really nice jumps in that short amount of time. It's also just really nice to be able to have the data in the first place. Regardless of how short our data collection time was in our pilot time, we wanted qualitative data either way, because we can think that the program is wonderful and gives us all the quantitative data in the world, but if the kids don't like doing it, you know, or the teachers find it boring to teach, it's not going to have the impact that we need to have for our students. So we collected some qualitative data too. This first chart talks about or looks at the teachers telling us how they felt about the engagement in the program, whether it was age appropriate for the students they were teaching, whether they had the opportunity to reteach skills. That was actually really important to us because we didn't want programs that were primarily digital that would just be like kid and computer over here. You know, we really wanted a reteaching opportunity. So we had that there. We looked at the fidelity of instruction, like, you know, is this assignment that that student is doing really focused on that skill, and are you seeing the carry over? And do you have the ability to assess the students' skills? So as you can see, the color codes are here. 5 was, what 5 means is, yes, a very high level of engagement, for example, whereas 1 would be low. Okay, so you can see where these things were rated. And again, we're not necessarily comparing like ILIT to Success Maker Math, but you can still see where all of those ranked. Okay, then as we mentioned before, Steve and Tracy and Jacqueline and I went into almost every single pilot teacher's classroom to see all of these programs. And then our principals went into at least one classroom as well. So when we had them go in, we made it very clear our teachers were really welcoming. They gave a whole bunch of different times that we could pop in. We made it very clear that this was not an observation of their teaching, but an observation of the program. We offered to use it as a walkthrough. Almost, I think every single person said, yes, please do. And we asked them too, administrators, what do you see in terms of this? We wanted to see it from different perspectives. What do you see when you're in there looking at these programs? And you can see what the feedback was for those. And then we asked our students, every single student from kindergarten to 12th grade got to give feedback on their program. So this chart's a little shifted. This chart is specific to the programs on the bottom, and you can see exactly how the questions were asked. So what it means, the question, what was actually said to the students was this: I can easily pay attention to this program. I feel like this program is good for how old I am. And you can see the rest of the items in the brackets over there. And these were what the kids got to say. Okay, that's what they're, instead of just high and low, that's where we gave them their answers.
Smiley face included.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We want to really make sure that they knew, like, it was that important. We had 157 students who responded. And you can see the chart on that side tells you the breakdown of the grades that the students were in. And then over on this side, which program or programs they were responding to, because a good chunk of students got to do something for reading and math, which was really cool. Okay, couple other things that we learned as we went through this pilot. So, imagine here's our teachers who are, I guess I should say too, we communicated to every family who had a student who was going through this program, just to let them know, your child's going to be participating in this program. We don't anticipate, in fact, we are fully aware that this program will continue to adhere to the instruction that meets your child's IEP goals, but it is a little different. And because we started in December, they had been using one thing and we're shifting to something else. We gave our teachers a lot of leeway in find the best time for you to make this transition. Like, we're doing the PD today, you have to stop everything you were doing and starting tomorrow. So they were really mindful about when they should begin to do that. But one of the questions that came up as we were working through it was, the teacher said, most of us use this program called AimsWeb to monitor the progress of our students' IEP goals for reading, writing, and math. And I'm doing this program that I love or like or don't like so much. But I really don't like that AimsWeb is just out here as just a random thing. And so we realized it really doesn't, it didn't go with any of the programs that we looked at. And so as an additional point to this, we thought we should really pilot something that is more aligned. And so we actually have teachers who wrapped up a little teeny mini pilot. We had about 12 teachers who said, yeah, I'd like to check out Easy CBM and put a child or two in the system and work through it with them. And we're going to pilot that fully next year to see if we really like that overall. So that was something else we learned. Progress monitoring is an integral part of IEP goal-based instruction. We also learned, as the teacher said, we really need a continuum of programs. So you saw the slide in the very beginning, this is where we started. And we had things for everything, but there wasn't necessarily thought and cohesion put into the layout of this. As we were looking at these things and hearing from different teachers, and especially teachers who got to do more than one, they really said, I love this because I love this about this and this about this, and I would love to see them all lined up together. Or my colleague in this building is doing this, or my friend who I taught with before, who's now up here and I'm down here, we've talked about this together. Or we had iReady, for example, teachers from K through 8th grade who all sat at this table together and could talk about how they were using the same program in different ways for the students. And so that was beautiful. And so that was so important to us as we decided which ones to recommend to you tonight. We also talked about through the program, the teachers asked us for this. They said, what are your expectations for us for doing this? How much do we need to do it? How do we ensure that we're doing it? Some of the teachers who said, I use this program and I think I'm doing what is required of me, but I don't really know. Because it is different to provide IEP goal-based instruction than it is to just be teaching, 3rd grade math. And so they really wanted those expectations from us. Those are all outlined in our handbook, which is more than we have time to show you tonight. And then finally, the professional development that came along with all of these programs was awesome. Everybody got at least 2 hours. Some got 12 hours. It was so great because they really felt comfortable using it. And they also had such a great opportunity to talk with each other about what they thought they should do, shouldn't do, or even coming together. Like somebody would say, oh, well, I did this. And another teacher would say, oh my God, that's brilliant. I'm going to go back and do it. So that was really, really wonderful. And it wasn't just one and done. The ongoing aspect of that and the fact that I get to sit in all of them helped me be able to have more thorough, deep conversations with them about it. We also wanted to make sure we highlighted the cultural responsiveness in the programs. And so there's some information here from both of the websites. But the four of us felt very comfortable in our observations that there was a lot of representation of diverse cultures and people and experiences. And we thought that that was really, that's very important in our community, and that we felt good about each of the programs. We highlighted these in particular because, surprise, that's what we're going to recommend to you in a moment. So these are our recommendations. Do you want me to do this, Sajid? Okay.
You can see it, that's our recommendation. I mean, we have a couple other slides to show you, but you can see there for K-8. What we have for supplemental, in addition to, right, for the IEP goals and for the wait time and what I need. And then, of course, there's the replacement side on the right-hand side. There are students who are getting more time in direct instruction because they have more of a larger gap to fill. So we really got to target their instruction.
You know, something, I don't know if it was missing in the slide or it's in a future slide, but our recommendation, we didn't have a recommendation for K-4 replacement reading. We didn't love anything that we used. And so we wanted to be honest with you and say that. We didn't love anything. We loved Curriculum Associates and their iReady and Ready Classroom, and they are just coming out with a comprehensive replacement reading program called Magnetic Reading. And so we want to pilot that for all of our replacement reading in the K-4 buildings for special education. We also have been using Read 180 and System 44 at the 5-6 level, and we want to continue using that. We thought our teachers love it, students love it, for the most part. Our students make progress, and we want to continue using that. We also are looking at corrective reading and decoding as an alternative because it's a good paper option. And it's a good option if we're not seeing progress, but we're not recommending that on any sort of large scale. It's just something we're recommending for ourselves that we have as something internally.
Yeah, so here you can see, as I mentioned in the beginning, that it's not a one and done, right? So while students in special education will be progress monitoring and recording their IEP goals, but now we're going to have this consistent use of program materials so we can measure holistically across buildings, within a building, grade level, certain group of students, however we want to do this. And you can see there, we're teaming with our Department of Innovation, Katie, Rachel, and Lincoln, data warehousing, all going to be in there. And we're going to really be able to pull this out. We can do it by school, grade, class, student, demographic, whatever we need from there.
One additional thing that we are doing is the Wilson Reading Program. We have 2 teachers currently who are certified in Wilson. They're one in a K-4 and one in Elkins Park School. And we have 3 elementary teachers who are completing a 3-day or have completed a 3-day elementary course. So Wilson Reading is a multi-sensory reading intervention program. It focuses on the decoding phonics and phonemic awareness. And in particular is a program that from a research perspective is very successful for students who have dyslexia. Now in the education world, in special education, we don't specifically address dyslexia, we address the specific learning disability. Dyslexia is medical, specific learning disability is the educational category that we use. But that doesn't mean that there may not be students with dyslexia in our schools. And so when other more traditional reading intervention programs are not as successful for our students, we do want to have an alternative. This is not something that we would be recommending just as a general intervention for students. There is a process, there are formalized assessments. And so all of that is something that we want to build over the course, particularly of next year. So we have, 2 additional students who are going to do a 3-day intro course over the summer. And then 4 of the 5, because one teacher's, changing her responsibilities. 4 of the 5 are going to do the full year of Wilson certification over the next school year. Once you do the 3-day course, you can provide Wilson instruction, but it's important to us that we go through the full certification for teachers.
And while it's grades 2 to 12, I mean, our intent, it's a very intense program. So we really want to capture these kids when they're in the elementary. All right. There's the price tag, right, so to speak, but we have lined up curriculum associates, right? It gives you the cost right there in the middle, and then some discounts and some perks to go along with it. So Ms. Kirkwood did a nice job of explaining all of this and her work with each of these companies and their communication back and forth. And albeit a little bit of negotiation as well, because they want our business as much as we want to utilize their materials and have this consistency.
I should be a little more clear. It's the first teacher guide per grade is free, not just one. So, yes, so sorry about, I was trying to keep it, from getting wordy, but I realized somebody else asked me that and I thought, oh, okay, I have to clarify that. And so just so you know, this 27,000 for curriculum associates would be an every year cost. Around there, but as you can see, these are the costs for 3-year subscriptions here for the Success Maker and I.
And our next steps, right, spring, we're gonna roll out, well, what we're doing right now is we've communicated our learning support handbook to staff. Waiting to finalize it with this material in that. And then the summertime to expose this to our teachers for some professional development. In-person professional development, pilot the EasyCBN, which Allison talked to you about. And then, of course, the pilot of the magnetic reading for the K-4 replace.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hanson and Ms. Kugler. Appreciate that. That was a lot of great information and a lot of details. And I appreciate all the work that went into running a very quick and efficient pilot program. So thank you for bringing this back to us. Questions from the board? Sorry, Dr. Cooley.
I just want to make a comment. I want to just appreciate work that our supervisors did along with Allison. It's been a lot of heavy lifting. It's been intense in a short time, and you've all worked really hard. You've heard Allison do most of the talking, and she is a person that's going to be missed in the department. 14 years ago, I recognized Allison when I was Lowell Moreland superintendent. She built the first life skills program at Lowell Moreland. I believe that 14 years ago, and she was a superstar. So that's why we recognized her at that time at the board level. And I feel privileged that I had a chance to, have this last step in her journey here with her. And I have to say the work that she has done has been outstanding, along with the work of her colleagues. So I just want to thank her on behalf of this team for the outstanding work that she's been doing and wish her well. She'll be going on to North Penn as a director of student services. So we wish her well, and again, thank her and thank Dr. Castrofone for this work. It's really much needed, and I think they've done an outstanding job.
With that, I was gonna, no, I'm glad you did it, because I was gonna thank her as well, but I was gonna do it at the end, and you did it much better than I did, having worked closely. Questions from the board? Mr. Bill.
First, thank you for that, presentation of Oakwood, and also, data in charge. Very exciting.
You're welcome.
So, one of the things that, strikes me being in manufacturing myself, is a phrase you shared about it. One of the programs, I think it's correct, we just have like the error-free component. I think it's
Errorless
errorless teaching. And, again, pharmaceutical manufacturing, that's something that we do, what I know in education. I'm sure that there's a challenge between, errorless and also engaging.
Yeah.
Because as adults, we can divulge and we've been there and have this regimented thing about ourselves, but I especially think about this in regards to our children. So I was encouraged just by the recommendation that there was a strong relationship between the more engaging programs and those that were supported by them. I also think about that in the larger context of this comment, the question, in the larger context of what we're doing overall, right? With how we are balancing between error-free or errorless type education moments that are more virtual in nature, digital in nature, in comparison to the skill of engagement, which I know a computer can do better than us. Yeah, things, yeah. So I'm encouraged by that, and also just thinking the bigger picture that finding that balance in all that we do, I think is important, especially now we're coming back, a heavily virtual learning experience. So I'm encouraged by that today. The second thing I thought came up as well, the same like teaching opportunities versus the online experience. So also happy that the record happened, but also encouraged to see that the choices from the students that were also less engaged were not recommended as well, not just those from the teachers. I thought that was awesome. Yeah, just wanted to put that one out there. Something that strikes me is what I think is a challenge for us just in general, right? With the age and the nature of those students. The fact that we're seeing that in pilots, we're also thinking that broadly finding that balance in the rest of our faculty, overall share. I think also something.
Yeah. Thank you for your feedbacks and thoughts. Very astute observation too, that errorless teaching can be kind of boring. But your comments also made me realize I totally forgot that we brought all sorts of materials for you to look at, because just as we're talking to you, in like virtual world and expecting you to somehow be able to visualize what our teachers and students were doing. So we brought all those materials, although I don't see them.
I know, we have this.
I don't know where they are.
We did have them.
They were here.
Yeah, they were
They
here.
were.
Yeah, we
Talked
saw them,
about
they
this.
weren't here the other day.
So they're all here,
Yeah.
they'll be here, they'll be right back, for you to touch and see and look through too, so. Thank you for prompting my. Great, thank you.
Is that right?
Just real quick, that's, no matter how digitized we get, we're still human.
Yeah.
That's why the qualitative is can only complement and then side by side.
That's encouraging to hear.
Yes,
right?
100%.
We're constantly in our lives, right, absorbing more digital experiences. And yes, I know it's kind of where the world is today, but I'm good with paper. Engage in how do you do that? You extract the experience out of the visual, or at least balance.
Just a comment, which is, I know when you all first gave the presentation about doing this work, that you talked about having student involvement, seeing them actually participate and providing feedback, I think was phenomenal, because typically, well, at least when I was growing up, you had a bunch of adults, old adults telling you what was fun, or what was interesting, or how you should learn. And so getting their feedback, I think is just so, prominent in this process. So thank you all for including that. Just a point of clarification, in the cost, and it was like a 3-year, was it for the one, like, I'll give an example, was it 17,000 for all 3 years or 17 per year?
Total.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, we would have approved it, but I was it wasn't, I don't want you to think I was concerned. I was just trying to understand, like in terms of contract.
Thank you, Henry. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Ms. Bowman?
One question about the qualitative,
back on the administrative staff. It's interesting that they're fairly different, actually, and do you have some thoughts or, you know, thoughts about that?
So here's the hard thing with that. We did not have, thinking from like a researcher standpoint, we did not have the same number of observations. Like, there were more administrators saw corrective reading, for example, than saw other programs, even though only 2 teachers were implementing corrective reading. That's the one in particular that at first I thought the same exact thing, Ms. Loman. So yeah, that's kind of the reason for that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. In terms of iLit, I think I heard you say, is there a writing component to that? as
Yes.
well? Oh, good, okay. So that often seems to be the missing link kind of in a lot of these corrective reading type programs.
There is, and in fact, when I visited Beth Doyle's class at the high school and talked to some of the students about that, they reluctantly told me they didn't like it, but it was stuck on their face. The teacher said, she really does like it, but they like getting the rewards and the stars and the recognition. But maybe in there, somebody they haven't seen before, they're not gonna read it out. But I do remember that.
And I also just want to echo what Carol said about all of this, this really online programs, we started to put it in the computer and saying, no, how about it? So, how we're actually using this as instruction. And the professional development as well. But it is very, very effective. So provide that service here. Very good. And I mean, it also, it has a connection to the foundation program, which I guess will be here soon. You're absolutely regular ed, so, glad to see these are expanding, as well.
Thank you. You'll see the teachers, request to attend for the Wilson things coming up on some upcoming board meeting agendas. You've seen them a few earlier in the year. Your comment too about professional development made me think about too, we now have all of these expert teachers who went through this pilot who are going to be informally the point people for their colleagues. And so that's a really nice thing.
Ms. Henry, it's like.
Actually, Ms. Margaret had her hand up, so I'll let her go first.
So I was going to say exactly what Jim said about the Wilson trainings. So I too am encouraged to see that we have that many teachers who are seeking the training and want to be trained in that. I think that's going to be very helpful in the long run across all the grades. I'm familiar with it. I have heard one thing that makes me crazy about iReady. I want to know if you have also heard about this. So iReady has a part of the program where, depending on how long students have been using it, they automatically get tested out of some of the foundational skills, whether or not they actually passed it or not.
Okay. So
if you've not heard that, please at least get clarity on that. I think it's kind of strange.
Yeah.
It's almost deceptive in trying to understand who knows what. Okay, but other than that, I don't have an iReady problem. That's just
Thank you.
that's my one iReady problem. So, but I think that it's fine, especially in this particular.
Okay, thanks for that feedback. We'll look into that.
So one quick
Oh,
question.
sorry, I forgot about this, Henry.
That came up, and Charles may appreciate this preference. Is there any thought to, and I'll use the term off-label use, And so I know this is specifically for special ed students, but if you have students in the general population who may be struggling in some areas, but they don't have IEPs, would some of these programs potentially be an option for them?
So that actually currently already exists,
Okay.
with the, Systems 44 and, 3180. So we have that actually, it has always been 7 through 12. It was brought down to 5, 6 by special education. However, wherever there's a need, and in the past, we used to use the T3000. And whenever there was a need and normally it would be an ed side, purchase that we also extend for all children, so therefore it could work for us.
And accessing that material through the MTSS process too. So it's another option as part of our rights.
In addition, I'm sorry, Sharon. Curriculum Associates did reach out to me in wrapping this up and asked to be connected to our Office of Ed to talk about exactly what you just said. We use iReady at Myers just for the WIN period for certain things. So
We have Mr. Lytle, he was supposed to do it at this meeting, at our previous meeting that we just had from 4 to 6. He was going to do with his teacher, but something came up, but we have that planned for our June K-12 meeting already. So we'd rather have him do it rather than the rep because he has had extensive experience in utilizing it. To bring some consistency in our practice as well.
Dr. Cantor, were you gonna add something?
I was
or
just
you-
gonna say, add to everything, and that's all linked is so that, the students go through the process, what they're getting material-wise and intervention-wise would be the students if they become identified special education students. So it's not like they're leaving the whole set of materials over here, going to the whole set of materials over here. That's the linkage. Link it, but when to assess, and the whole process leading to students who may possibly qualify.
Thank you again. It's been said, but I'll say it again, for this very comprehensive overview of all the pilot programs that you worked through. I just really have one question, I guess, about magnetic reading, pilot for the fall, is how many students do you plan to pilot it with?
So when we collected our data for ordering programs, at the K4 level, I want to say there probably weren't more than maybe 30 or 40 students total who would receive their full ELA instruction in a special education classroom. That's a rough estimate. We can get you a more specific number.
I'm just sort of wondering about the size of the
Yeah.
pilot, and how long, will it be sort of a similar time frame in terms of collecting information? Shorter, like what are your thoughts?
No,
Longer?
At least for a half year.
At least a half
Typically,
Okay.
is what you like to see a pilot occur.
so once we get the PD up and running, probably natural growth sometime at the end of January.
Great. Thank you. And I really appreciate, not just going with something, because that's what you piloted. If there was something that really was a good match, I'm really a fan of continuing the search to find something that really fits our kids' needs. So, thank you.
Yeah, no, shout out to my fellow board members, because those were, you checked off, +1.
That's what happened when you go first.
Yeah, no, I waited. I was like, I'm sure other people. So +1 to student agency, right? +1 to the curiosity around the data and all those things. But continuing the theme, when I hear all these things, we're also embodying our policy 829 around equity. And so specifically around using data to understand what type of learner is being engaged, and how that, and specifically providing resources, right? And with the Wilson Reading Program, even if everyone doesn't have it, we have that resource in our back pocket for the students that need it. And so it's not always explicitly said, but these are the moments, right? In our policy, we talk about, reports and looking at data, and we are doing it. And so I want to make it an explicit connection And it may not be, okay, we're having a meeting around policy 829, but these meetings embody how we enact policy 829. Never work as well as well. So, want to make that connection explicit. And plus one, if we were in Parliament, I would have yelled out, here, 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 a lot of times throughout the.
Thank you for that connection. It actually came up in a conversation that Dan and I were having today. This is a perfect example of that policy connected.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. Ms. Loman. Let Dr. White go.
Sorry, oh, I'm sorry.
No, don't, sorry.
Very quickly, easy question. Can we get an update on what this is like a year? I'd like to see what a year of.
We'll be getting,
Data
we're gonna be getting updates, you know, periodically. That's
Yeah. Great.
Ms. Loman.
Sorry, a couple other things just occurred to me that the Read 180 system 44, I know that we have been using that in history for, gosh, a long time. I mean, I've been, I know, heard about it, probably about the past 10 or 12 years, I guess. The thing that gives me pause about Read 180 and system 44, and I know the teachers might like it, the students might be used to it, comfortable with it, but how effective? You know, when we look at our PSSE scores for around students who might use kind of reading, especially if we're using Read 180 for the some older kids who are taking the PSSAs in 6th and 8th grade, you know, like how effective do we actually think it's been in meeting kids' reading goals? I only bring that up because I think there's something that a teacher said to me about it probably 10 years ago. His concerns about the effectiveness of those programs. That I just put that out there as a question and I'm expecting an answer, but like just I say that because I'm worried that just because we've done it and people like it or people are comfortable with it, familiar with it, doesn't necessarily mean it's always the best fit. So I just asked that. The other question I have is about are all of these programs, I'm assuming, sort of delivered in a pull-out type of program? So they're not delivered in a regular ed setting, they're delivered in a learning classroom.
Right, it's either replacement at the same time as ELA or math, or it's supplement, sometime outside of that window of the gen ed core instruction.
Do we think that there's any of these programs that could be, like, let's say we're doing it, I'm not saying we, you know, I'm just saying, are there any of these programs that could be delivered in the regular ed classroom if we were using a co-teaching model or some other way to provide this type of support that would still be with like honest guidance?
Yeah, I mean, all of those programs have the capability of being delivered that way as well.
I know that's like a second step kind of thing, because there's a lot sort of on our plate right now, because first step, but I just put that out there as a consideration for next level.
For your first question, we certainly can look at providing you an update at our next Ed Affairs meeting, even though the focus won't be on this same topic. We can certainly look at providing just a very brief overview on the program effectiveness for Read 180. We can do a look back over the past, say, 5 years and provide that update. I know you won't figure out some looking at you, but I do realize that. But Dr. Powell, we can certainly look to provide that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, I know we've been using it for a long time, just to really clear about like.
I think sometimes, if you're looking at that, I mean, I don't have this data obviously in front of me, but sometimes when you're comparing it, you have to look at the growth of our students. So sometimes comparing it to PSSA data.
I know it's not fair.
It can be hard,
Yeah.
given that EA requires us to instruct them on grade level. PSSAs tell us to assess them on grade level and the students.
Yeah, no, I know that's not a fair comparison, that's right, but.
But I mean, that's our goal, is to get them to be more comfortable and get them closer to that.
Any other board comments or questions? So to the public, anyone online or anyone that's in the room that would like to share, ask a question?
No questions.
Thank you, Dr. Riley. Yep.
Hi, it's Erin Oxford with Coop. My son is a sophomore in the high school. I had a question in reference to, the students that do not have IEPs, but may be struggling in some of the areas and how this information is rolled out to them. My son is a B student at best. So, there's quite a few kids that I know of, especially the sports teams that have had some issues in certain subjects, but I know I haven't received information about this, so I'm not sure how it's getting out to the parents. I consider myself a very involved parent, but for your average parent who may not show up to meetings all the time, just kind of checks grades, how is this information getting out to them that this information, that these programs are available? I had no idea about this, and I'm sure there's other parents that have no idea about this at the high school level.
So that's our future work. We're actually working on right now. As we're working on, and I've mentioned this in previous meetings, as we're working on really fine tuning our pathways under Portrait of a Graduate. We're also looking at that parallel track for our parents in terms of what are the resources available as students are matriculating K through 12. So that's current work for us right now. And as I'm thinking holistically, putting that together, there's probably also a snapshot that we can develop by school that kind of shows what the resources in each of the respective buildings are that we can push out to families. Like even a lot of students don't know the resources that are within the buildings, not alone our parents. So
Right.
Those are all pieces we need to address. I don't know.
Dr. So if we could, spend just a minute to expand upon that. We just shared this, blueprint with our K-12 team today, and I'm looking back to Dr. Riley. So this will be a snapshot, this is a blueprint of what the Ed office has been working on, and it's still a work in progress. So I don't want to give you a perspective that it's complete, but it's a lot of heavy lifting that has been done and will continue to be done over the summer that will ultimately be pushed out on our website. So we'll be fully transparent with the availability of all the resources by subject area. There will be content standards. I'm going to turn to Dr. Riley to just go to one area that he can more fully expand upon to give you just a quick glimpse of what we'll be working on.
So what we have here are all the different curricular programs, content areas that that are included across the district. And so if we just go to math, this will be community facing. If anyone wants to see the programming within mathematics in any grade, they can click on a specific grade to see scope and sequence essentially is what's going to be provided here. More generally though, we just click on what are the goals for math. It breaks this down into what the state refers to as transfer goals. Long-term transfer goals are first, and then the state calls these understandings big ideas, and then the essential questions. This is all taken from PDE SAS, and so we didn't create this. We're just using what the state's asking of us as a school district to provide to our students. So this is generally what we're doing in math K through 12. But again, if anyone wants to see something more specific for a grade level, we can go ahead and click on, I'm not sure we are all in here yet or not, but we'll be able to see a course description, dates in terms of how long is this course designed for. Most of our elementary will all do the same thing, or be the full year, but if we have any elective courses in here, you'll be able to see that those specifics as well. And then unit by unit, what the topics are.
So it's certainly intended to also give our teachers, our parents, our community a perspective on the instructional minutes that we're spending, kind of pacing that we're asking of our teachers, as well as the resources, because we've been having open dialogue really good information sharing between our teachers as well as our administrators, and realizing that we might be doing some different things in some of our schools, and we want to make sure we bring more consistency in our practices as well. So you'll be able to ultimately see all the instructional resources that we're using on this blueprint as well. It's a lot of work in a very consolidated period of time. But I can tell you that this Ed Office team is working really, really hard, and I'm very grateful for the energy and the time that they're expending in this process.
Thank you. I just want to add one comment. I appreciate all of this, and I hope that it comes to blossom soon we want it to be. Just from conversations I've had with several parents, a consensus seems to be amongst many parents I've spoken to is that our students that are AP honors level are great. They're doing well. IEP students have the attention that they're getting. The concern is for the students that are in the middle, the ones that are not your AP honor students. They're not quite requiring IEPs that seem to, from our perspective, falling below the benchmark when it comes to graduating and going to the college level. It's a major concern that these kids are just not getting the attention that they need to succeed at the next level. We have a lot of students that are not eligible for the NCAA clearinghouse, and they want to play sports to play in college because of their grades. And a lot of them, they're not getting into the schools that they want to get into because they're not, in our opinion, adequately prepared. So I feel like more of these kids it's happening to are the ones that are kind of falling in the middle, not your AP students, not your IEP students, but the ones that are just in the middle. So how are we focusing on making sure that they are prepared for the next level and not falling behind? Because that is a major concern for a lot of parents that I talk to. My son is only a sophomore, so this is what I've seen for the last 2 years. And my perspective is a little bit different because prior to coming to the public school system, my son was in the Catholic school system. I was raised in a private school system. So I've seen both ends of the spectrum. Just seeing where he's at now at the 10th grade and just talking to his classmates and his teammates and conversations about their work and what the expectations of turning things in and getting things done on time. I honestly just feel like they're a little bit behind. Part of this, I feel like it's blame for COVID, the time they were out of school, that was a big impact on them. But another part of it, I just feel like there's something that's being missed with those kids that fall within the middle. So I'm hoping that it's addressed because it's a major concern for a lot of parents. Like I said, I'm a very local involved parent. You have a lot of parents that just can't make meetings, don't have the time to say these type of things, but it's something that's definitely being talked about. So I hope that we can address it. Thank you.
So I can just respond real quick. So this per se is not addressing that. But what you're referencing, and I wouldn't even say the students in the middle. I would say that there's some best practices that we need to implement with fidelity, right? So beyond interim conferences and all of that, administration has to make sure that they're reviewing student grades and that teachers are, and that they're having data conversations with teachers, right? So, you know, one of the practices that I remember vividly as a principal was really looking at the disaggregated grades and especially your E and D list when it comes out, interim time and also report card time. And then having a very systemic approach where we're having conversations with teachers, especially when there's a disproportionality in the percent of kids that may be failing in any specific teacher's class or caseload. That's our work, central office, to make sure that's happening at the school base. We also heard Ms. Collins when we were talking about some of the pilot pieces. That's why we've implemented that whole MTSS approach, right? The MTSS is to address instruction for every student holistically. So as we're zeroing in on like those early warning indicators, the absence, the behavior pieces, the grades, there's interventions that we should be able to implement that are gonna support that child. So, though, that's the work. And I just have to make sure that that's happening with the fidelity in which it needs to be. So I just wanted to speak to some of the how, and the what we need to make sure we're doing, consistently across the board.
Thank you, Dr. Billy, Dr. Riley, and everyone for the sneak peek at this work. That's exciting and it looks like a lot of work. So we appreciate that and look forward to seeing it as Ms. Knox said, blossom, if you will. And I think with that, unless there's any other questions for Dr. Ketchenbone, Ms. Kugler left, but we wish her well as she heads out to North Bend. They're lucky to have her. And we will move on to our second presentation, which is a completely different area of Ed Affairs, the calendar. If we could I need a 1 minute.
Okay. You can take a time out.
Just a 1 minute.
Absolutely. Give
While we
Colin a
transition.
chance to get
Thank you.
the recommended calendar up.
Oh, you are? Okay.
There we go. Perfect. Yay. Thank you, Mrs. Dr. Riley. Done it. Thank you.
Did you look into that?
So next week I go for a follow-up.
Okay.
So I'm gonna see who's possible.
Okay.
So if I have more time after that, I'm hoping some of this can be done. But Penn's gonna come out. But no, thanks for mine. But I saw someone with it, actually.
It makes it a lot easier.
I saw someone with it, but I had to go for a policy.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, the day I had my surgery, they came to the crutches, I was like, oh, no, absolutely not.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's actually.
Okay. Yeah, back problems, everything.
Yeah, well, more than part.
Okay, that, yeah, big word. It just, makes it, especially if around.
Well, I've been trying to.
Okay.
Now my thing, my wife, like coming to that point where it's like, all right, I need to start helping more.
Right.
I mean, our patience is like, as human beings, it's like, all right, I've been up a lot over the last 2 weeks, so I need to try.
Okay.
Even though she's telling me that.
Right. She healed properly.
Yeah, but.
So they just get back out there, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I know inside she's probably like.
It's a fine balance, I think, of like at one for us, like, no, you have to eventually.
But she's like, don't do anything.
Well, she doesn't want you to. Not
It
hit
works.
her
Yeah.
person. I need you better.
Yeah. It's probably what it is.
As a mother, that would be my.
Recovery process was very
Like, let's
smooth
make
and
it
fast.
as easy as possible.
Alright.
It's back to honest.
Thanks for asking.
No problem. It's starting.
I think we can get started. I'm sure Dr. Striven will be back in a moment and he's seen this before, so.
Sure has.
So I will turn it over to Dr. Bailey and Ms.
Yeah,
Collins.
absolutely. So, earlier in the school year, we were given, an update by PDE telling all school districts across the state that we're no longer required to implement the 180-day requirement that we were in the past, but we can now move to looking at the calendar and instruction. As long as we're meeting a 990-hour requirement, we have flexibility. We definitely talked within our ed office team about the calendar, and having been a former superintendent, I get really nervous when we have already recommended something to go back to the community. So I was a big fan, and I will, she's not hearing this for the first time. I was like, no, but you know what? I'll still listen. And so this girl has tenacity and she kept chipping away at it. And at the end of the day, honestly, through that tenacity and really that burning desire to bring some pieces to the calendar that were missing, we're here tonight. So I want to thank Ms. Collins for staying the course, because I do think we have a recommendation for you to consider, knowing that you already approved the 24-25 calendar. That gets at bringing some parent conferencing into the calendar that we haven't had, as well as bringing a holiday that certainly helps to honor more of our families that we now have in our district. And so I'm not going to get into all the details. I'm just going to turn it over to Ms. Collins. She'll do a quick walkthrough of some of the ads that we have, some of the minor changes that will address some of the needs that we currently face. And with that, I want to thank her for her tenacity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor, because you are now probably seeing the fifth or sixth iteration. But taking in feedback, taking back the feedback that we receive from building administrators, you know, some stakeholders just around their thoughts and processes, and really think about the fact that it's June, so the change may be different, like at the start of school year, and cause for parents and families. So you will see what we're proposing that really impacts the second network. It's just our normal business statement. Okay, so in the past, we've always had November report card conferences. However, the first day was only for K-8, and then the second day was K-12. So what we're proposing for the upcoming school year is that both days will be K-12. So there'll be 2 days for high school as well, and that November 25th is just going to be an early dismissal for all students K-12.
And this falls right there early. That goes to Ms. Knox's question. Really about additional opportunities to have touch points to calibrate around how students are doing, parents having a level of awareness, which was a missed opportunity.
No problem. And what's key too, when you see early dismissal now, you know how we said those holiday dismissal days and different times. Elementary guy came out, when early that no longer will exist, we'll have one standard early dismissal day and time. And those dates and times will be provided to parents before the end of the school year, for next school year, so you can plan accordingly. But we only will have early dismissal days throughout the 2024-2025. So that's the biggest change in November. The next change comes in March. We have added 2 additional report card conference days in the spring, which is March 27th and March 28th. They will also be K-12. And we also add the Eid holiday on March 31st. So all schools and offices will be closed. April 11th, so this is the spring break. We've heard varying concerns around the shortened spring break. And and why is it not longer again? So to be honest, Dr. Silly talked about the 990 hours. Dr. Riley and I did the math, and that's roughly 28. So it gave us the opportunity to really look at what we were doing, and people felt like they needed the full week break. Our teachers, our students. So this brings back that Friday, April 11th, will be the early dismissal for students. Students will be out of school the 14th through the 18th, but teachers will come in for their professional development day on April 14th. And part of this is that we're currently under our current contract. Our teachers are required to do some legal leaves, so we can't get around that. So we have to ensure that they have staff days. And we are looking to see how I know that one comment was made previously about student participation on those professional learning days, but we also know that CA has also requested from us some virtual options for the team. And we have found, obviously, through the pandemic, that we had greater attendance when they were virtual. So being flexible in our consideration as we plan collectively with CIPT about upcoming pieces. So that means we'll have the full week of spring break and then have the Monday that initially was in the calendar after that Monday off as well. So those are actually specific changes to the calendar, when I go to this. So here's the calendar on the screen. One of the major changes is the end of the school year. Normally we have 4 weather days, 4, now we're going to have 3, just to ensure that we get in, enough, the amount of student days, that which kind of puts us at 178 versus the 180. But if you look at PDE, skip PDE, report card conferences are considered student days because we are talking and, with parents and not with student progress. So that in itself, although they're not physically here, is technically still considered a student day. So.
And we have the virtual.
Right. And so we still have the 3 weather days built in. So with the 3 weather days built in, the last student day would be the 13th. And if we don't have student weather days and we are submitting our flexible learning plan. So if we use virtual days, then the last student day could be the 10th. Okay.
And the established early dismissal time, as Ms. Collins said, will be consistent, so we won't have to remember which.
Correct.
time
In the high school,
That was
get off
very
first. Always.
confusing.
In middle school, in elementary, that will help for younger people, parents who have families of young kids at elementary, at the high school as well. Because the other holiday days that elementary got first.
Yeah.
So now the older kids will get out first, and then the younger kids, they'll be able to see this. So that's my presentation. And
Thank you, Ms. Collins, appreciate it, and, questions from the board? Ms. Woodson?
Thank you so much. As a parent of somebody who is in the high school and somebody who is in elementary school, I appreciate the streamlining of early dismissal times. And I just really like this calendar for next summer. So I really appreciate it. It actually, this year with Passover falling in the middle of the week where we had no days off, where it was not aligned with Easter, made things challenging for our family. And this, in 2025, the holidays line up, and having that time off just makes life so much easier for packing lunches, and it's just very inclusive. So thank you. Much appreciated. And I'm thrilled about the March report card conferences. It was something that I have wanted for many years. Always wondering, like, obviously, as parents, we can touch base with our children's teachers whenever, but to have a set time that is dedicated to that and building that expectation in for partnership makes me very happy. So thank you.
Ms. Henry?
So I have one question that makes me feel really stupid, but I'm going to ask it. What is the March 31st holiday? How do you pronounce it? And what is?
I'm sorry, it's a Muslim house, so it's the end of the day.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you for that.
Other board comments, questions?
Just comment about being encouraged by the need in our calendar. For, I've been in the school district for 12 years now, and I have learned a significant amount about the community and see that it is difficult to manage through the holiday for our population without having the ability to reset and celebrate. So I'm grateful that. One day, consideration. Yes. Travel on Monday this year. My kids were not in school. But sure. It's awesome.
Other comments or questions?
I just also added the addition of that second report card or parent teacher conference option is just so neat. And just really glad that was.
I concur with adding those second report card conferences. And I think kind of listening to the feedback as I shared before the meeting, when we first changed spring break, whatever that was now. We kind of based it on feedback that we'd received, and it sounds like some of us liked the short spring break theory better than we actually liked it in practice. So I think being responsive to that, and maybe it sounded good on paper, but it didn't work out so well. So again, I think it's good to be cognizant of that, and I'm super excited for the alignment of the times on the half days. Two clarification questions. One, around those half days, so all of the orange are the half days or the early dismissal days, and that includes the Wednesday early dismissals and the holiday dismissal. And so I guess I am curious, it sounds like we don't have those times yet, but we will have them soon.
Yes.
Okay, so I look forward to that. And the second question is, Ms. Collins, when you talked about the student days being 178 and saying that PDE counts report card or parent teacher conferences as student days, does that mean those days, those 4 days we're not counting them in that 178, or they are in 178?
No, they're not counting the 178.
Okay.
They're not.
For those numbers, those are
Exactly.
actual
Those are
student
actual
days.
student
Student
days.
is
Exactly.
PD. I just wanted to make sure I
Yeah.
understood. Thank you. Any questions from the public? Anyone online?
No questions.
Sarah Knox, thank you. Thank you for adding the second parent teacher conference in the spring, especially at the high school level, we have block scheduling, they're in different classes at that time of the year. Get the teachers at this time of the year, so that's very helpful. And also thank you for adding E onto the calendar, particularly because we do have a great population of Muslim students in our community, and most of them start fasting past the age of 12 or 13. So to have that day to celebrate their feast is very important for them. So I appreciate you adding that to the calendar.
I guess I have one more question. I guess I am not aware of, and I think we maybe talked about this earlier, about what offerings, I don't know when Right at School are after school care. Are there any days that there's not school that's opened or not? I think we sort of started to talk about that childcare. And I know, I just don't know what days it is available.
So I can tell you for now, because I just was in a meeting this morning asking them for a 5% increase, you know that. But in addition, providing some other rooms in Cheltenham for the summer and letting them, with permission, of course, from facilities, and Josh, letting them have the 7th and the 10th. So those are days that parents think that worry. So for this year, the 7th and the 10th, we were not operating that program. They are now going to operate it, and they will operate it throughout the summer at Cheltenham. We don't have the upcoming calendar yet.
Okay.
So we were just looking at the here and now for the summer, but they are going to go back and we'll have another 2 weeks about that.
Okay, great. And just important information for our families that
Of
use
course.
that resource. And since there are a few more days off, just
Yeah.
making sure that we.
And they shared that our parents were clamoring to have them up and running, with them.
On the set, ready, yeah.
And so we said that's a no-brainer, of course, we provide that. So we'll get that conversation here.
Thank you. Thank you for that. There are no other questions. Calendar, again, thank you for all of the work. It sounds like many iterations and lots of meetings and fine tuning.
Oh, yeah.
So we appreciate that, all of that kind of work, and I will take. Favor.
Aye.
Aye.